Tonight, I'd like to tell you a story about a train that only appears when the world grows quiet, when kitchen lights click off one by one and the wind lays its head down on the roofs of sleeping houses. It's called the Moonrise Line, and if you listen closely, very closely, you might hear it humming somewhere beyond the last lamppost, waiting for anyone carrying a heavy day and a hopeful heart dot in a small town stitched together with cobblestone streets and lemon trees that glowed like little lanterns even after dusk. There lived a boy named Sammy. He was not a hero by any grand measure. He was simply a collector of stories, of moments, of the gentle bits of life that other people let pass by. He kept his collection inside a wooden box under his bed, and in it he placed the kinds of treasures that adults often forget to notice. The first leaf that turned gold each autumn, the ribbon from a kite that learned to fly, a seashell that sounded like rain, the tag from a sweater his grandmother knit, and a paper star with a smear of blueberry jam across its tip because he had made it during breakfast out. Sammy believed that the night had its own hidden day, and that within it, quiet things did busy work stars whispered to each other. Rivers tried on silver dresses, and the moon listened to prayers no one knew they were saying. But even a believer can have a heavy day, and this day had been heavy. His best friend Noor had moved to a city across the water. Everyone promised that letters could cross oceans faster than sadness, but no one told him sadness does not have to obey the speed limit. So as the clock near the stairs leaned toward midnight, Sammy put on his old navy sweater, the one that smelled faintly of cardamom and soap, and slipped outside with his wooden box tucked under his arm. The lemon trees were still. The town fountain looked like a quiet thought. He followed the lane to the edge of town where the road forgot its stones and became a soft path of dust. At the end of the path stood a station that most people never saw. The sign said, Lullaby Harbor, Moonrise Line, and beneath that, in silver script that only appeared when you needed it most, another line, tickets accepted, questions, wishes, goodbyes. Sami's breath made small clouds. The station lamps glowed like warm honey, and then he heard it, the faintest bell, the smooth, sure glide of something arriving without hurry. The Moonrise Line came into view, an elegant train painted night sky blue, its windows glowing like jars filled with fireflies. A woman in a conductor's coat stepped down to the platform. Her hair was white like shy lightning, and her eyes were calm as a lake that knew the moon well. Good evening, she said. Where are you traveling? I'm not sure, Sammy answered. I just wanted to go where sad things get lighter. Then you've come to the right train. She held out a silver punch for tickets, but there was no paper to punch. Instead, she nodded toward the wooden box. May I? Sammy hesitated, then offered it. The conductor opened it, peered inside at the little treasures, and smiled the way a person smiles when they find their own childhood inside a pocket they forgot to check. Good, she said softly. You brought provisions? He climbed aboard, and the train slid away from the station as quiet as a page turning. Inside, the carriage looked like a living room built by stars-cushioned seats, soft blankets folded like friendly clouds, bookshelves with titles that flickered into the stories you needed most. A kettle on a brass cart sighed, and steam curled up as if telling a secret. Sammy found a window seat. Outside, fields slept in rows like notebooks closed for the night. The conductor poured him a cup of something that tasted like cinnamon courage. I'm Reza, she said. I'll be your conductor. We make a loop through the night country and return you by dawn. You can get off at any stop or simply ride and listen. She tapped the brim of her hat. The Moonrise Line only asks one thing. When you see a truth that belongs to you, pick it up. Sammy held his cup and nodded. The train's rhythm set a gentle beat against the glass, and his eyes floated toward the darkness that wasn't empty at all. It was a quilt stitched with constellations and soft chances. The first stop was the Library of Breezes. The platform there was paved with river stones, and every time the wind touched them, they chimed like distant bells. The library itself had no walls, only arches woven from willow branches and shelves that knew exactly what you were searching for, even if you did not. Readers sat in comfortable chairs, turning pages that smelled like rain. A librarian with sleeves rolled up to the elbows greeted the passengers. "Welcome," she whispered, as one does in libraries. "Tonight's collection includes the books you meant to read when life grew too busy." Sammy wandered. He found a thin volume titled "How to Carry a Goodbye Without Breaking Your Back." He opened it and discovered not paragraphs, but a map. It showed a path through a forest called After, leading to a hill called Remember. Ending at a lighthouse called Still Here, there were notes in the margins. One read, "Your friend does not stop existing where you cannot see them. They simply keep living where you are not looking." Another said, "Waves do not erase. They redraw." He traced the map with his finger, and something inside loosened. The librarian touched his shoulder. "You can't check out maps," she said kindly, "but you can fold them into your heart." Back on the train, Sami sat with the book in his lap, even though he couldn't take it with him. The memory was enough. The knowledge was already inside. The second stop was the Garden of Quiet Engineers. Here, owls wore spectacles and measured starlight with little rulers. Crickets tuned the night's orchestra. A frog in a tiny vest arranged dewdrops on leaves with a pair of tweezers until they spelled the word breathe when seen at dawn. In the center, a workshop buzzed with moths conducting headlamp experiments. A small owl with a clipboard fluttered to Sammy's side. "You look like you've been holding your breath since afternoon," the owl noted. "We can fix that." He handed Sammy a silk ribbon with instructions printed down its length. "Inhale like you're smelling bread. Hold like you're holding hands. Exhale like you're blowing a wish. Repeat until the band in your chest stops pretending to be Iron Dot Sammy followed along." And the air felt more like a friend and less like a task. He tied the ribbon around his wrist, where it fluttered each time he remembered to be kind to his lungs. The third stop was called the House of Forgotten Instruments. It was a wide wooden hall where things that used to sing waited for their second chance. Harmonicas left in drawers, pianos with one stubborn key, drums from school bands, flutes that remembered the taste of lip balm and laughter. People took turns. No one played to impress. Everyone played to remember. The conductor, Reza, carried in a weathered violin and tucked it beneath her chin. The first note rose like a shy bird from a bush. The second note followed, braver, and together they lifted the room. Sammy found a small drum with a faded blue strap. He tapped it with careful fingers. His rhythm wasn't perfect, but it felt honest. 1, 2, 3. He thought of Noor and the way they used to skip stepping stones at the river. Always counting, always daring another hop. 1, 2, 3. He remembered a morning they ran in the rain and pretended each puddle was a city that needed visiting. By the time the song turned quiet, Semi felt as if he had written a letter without paper that might somehow reach his friend's ears through the soft machinery of the night. Back on the train, dawn was still far away. Sleepy conversation drifted in little islands. Reza walked the aisle, checking on each passenger with a look that measured not tickets but moods. She paused beside Sami. "What did you put in your pocket?" She asked. "A map I didn't take," he said. "That's the best kind," she smiled. "It doesn't get lost." They passed through the whispering hills, where the wind carried bits of conversations that had never found their endings. Somewhere a voice finished a sentence that began years ago with "someday I'll," and somewhere else another voice replied, "Yes, let's." Sami pressed his palm to the window and watched as the hills rose and felt like breezes. Sleeping under blankets, The fourth stop was the workshop of gentle fixers. Here, nothing was thrown away because it was broken. Lamps with chipped shades found matches who didn't mind. Teacups with hairline cracks were painted with gold glue until the seams shone brighter than the porcelain. In one corner, a cobbler mended a pair of shoes whose soles were worn from chasing dreams. Over the door hung a sign, "Please bring your flaws." "We're very fond of them. Can you fix a day?" Sammy asked the fixer at the counter. "We can't change the day," she said, tying her hair back with a ribbon smudged with paint. "But we can give you better pockets to carry it in." She handed him a small pouch with a calm blue lining. "This is for your heavy feelings. Put them here when they're too much to hold. It won't make them vanish, but it will make your hands free to hold something else too." Sammy tucked the pouch into his sweater. He didn't feel cured. He felt companioned, and that was sometimes better done as the train slipped back into the night. Reza announced, "Next stop, the lighthouse with no sea." That made the passengers smile. How could a lighthouse exist without water? They would soon find out. The lighthouse stood in the middle of a field, tall and white, its light turning slow circles over the grass, painting everything with a pale kindness. An elderly man sat on a stool at its base, mending nets that had never touched waves. "Welcome," he said. "I keep the light for travelers who sail through thoughts. Plenty of storms there, too." He pointed up the steps. At the top, the view is made of answers that come the moment after you stop reaching for them. Sammy climbed. Each stair seemed to tell a story in a steady voice, step by step, day by day. At the top, he looked out. The field spread like green sleep in all directions. The town he came from twinkled small and good. Somewhere, Nora's new city glowed too, and even though he couldn't see it, he knew its lights held rooms where his friend would laugh, make new maps, carry new mornings. The lighthouse beam slid gently across his face, and for a moment, he felt the simple truth of being both here and there. He did not have to choose a single place for his heart. Hearts, it turns out, are rooms, not cages. When he climbed down, the lighthouse keeper offered him a tiny glass bottle with a cork. "For messages," the man said. "You can speak into it, and when you're ready, uncork it near a window. Your words will know where to go." Sammy thanked him and placed the bottle carefully beside the silk ribbon on his wrist. Back aboard, the train grew even cozier, as if the seats themselves understood that the night had reached the part where people get drowsy but do not yet want to let go. A woman with silver bracelets hummed a tune that sounded like a small boat on a good lake. A child down the aisle yawned so wide it felt contagious. Reza dimmed the lights and sat across from Sammy. "Lullaby Harbor soon," she said softly. "But there are a few more places if you're awake." "I'm awake," he said, though the truth was he was half made of warm blankets by now. "Good," Reza replied. "There's the market of small braveries." It wasn't a market in the usual sense. There were no coins, no haggling. Stalls offered simple acts, a place where you could practice saying no without apologizing. A bench where you could rehearse forgiving yourself for a mistake. A shelf where you could trade a fear for a question. Sammy stopped at a stall manned by a calm woman knitting a scarf that seemed to be made of evening light. "What do you wish you were brave enough to do tonight?" she asked. "Write to my friend without pretending I'm not sad," he said. She nodded and handed him a small, flat stone painted with the words, "Start with true. Write your letter on the inside of your heart first," she advised. "Then the paper will be easy?" Sammy placed the stone in his pocket, feeling its cool weight, and thought of the tiny bottle waiting to be uncorked near his window. The train drifted on. Outside, the stars did what stars always do. They burned without demanding to be the sun. The passengers grew quiet in the way people do when they reach those tender rooms inside themselves, where everything is honest and nothing is urgent. The next stop was the meadow of second chances. The grass there grew in soft bunches that invited ankles to forgive a stumble. Children, real ones, and the kind who live inside grown-ups flew kites made of old promises, and every time one dipped toward the ground, a gust of patient wind lifted it again. Sammy watched as a man untangled the same string he had tangled many times before, and instead of cursing, he murmured, "We'll get it," as if speaking to himself and the world at once. Sign near the path read, "This way to try again." No one guarded it. No one measured how many times you walk that way. The meadow simply held its shape. Open, willing, greened-out Sammy did not need to fly a kite. He needed only to stand and feel how a place like this could exist. And in knowing so, he understood something delicate. Most doors are patient, and they do not lock when we walk away. They only wait. Reza checked the sky, tilting her head as if listening to the moon itself. "One last stop," she said, "if you like." "What is it called?" "The Porch of Listening," she answered. "Where you can sit with someone who does not fix you, does not advise you, does not hurry you. They only listen until your words find their own shape." They arrived at a small house with a wooden porch that breathed peppermint, as if leaves had been crushed in its boards long ago. Rocking chairs swayed gently, inviting anyone with a story to sit. An old woman with hair like a halo of dandelion seeds poured cups of tea that tasted like time well spent. Sammy sat. The old woman nodded, as if to say, "Go ahead." "It was a heavy day," he began. "My friend moved. Everyone says I'll be fine until it sounds like a command. I will be fine, but also I am sad right now, and I want that to be holy, not a hiccup to hide." The rocking chairs made a rhythm like a calm heartbeat. The old woman took a sip. "Keep going. I brought my wooden box because I thought it would help to carry things that remind me of staying. But now I think maybe I should add something new, something that reminds me of going. What might that be?" She asked. Sammy thought. "At last," he said, "a train ticket I can't see, but I know I used." He smiled. "And a small bottle for messages, and a ribbon that teaches me to breathe. And maybe a stone that says start with true." "Then put them in," she said. "And let the box be what it always wanted to be. Not a museum, but a harbor." Sammy's eyes stung a little in a good way. He looked out at the night, which had turned soft blue at the edges, like the moment before the first bird decides to wake the sky. He realized the heaviness in his chest had shifted, not vanished, but balanced like a book in the right hand and a lantern in the left. He could walk with both. Back aboard, Reza adjusted her hat and took her place at the front. "Lullaby Harbor," she announced. "Final stop before morning." The carriage hummed in agreement. Pillows sighed. Blankets moved like quiet tides as they rolled into the harbor. Sammy saw the town as he'd never seen it. Roofs wearing hats of pale light. Chimneys purring the last warm breath of the night. The fountain shining without splashing, as if full of stars. The station looked exactly as it had when he'd left, and entirely different, because he was a little different now. And that changes the shape of everything. He stood to leave, then paused. "Reza," he said, "what happens if I need the train again?" She smiled with her entire face. "You won't always find it," she said, "and that's because sometimes you won't need it. But on the nights you do, listen for the bell. The Moonrise Line prefers passengers who carry questions like lanterns." He thanked her. She tapped the brim of her hat, and the door opened. The platform air felt like clean sheets. Sammy walked home with the horizon beginning to breathe the faintest pink. The lemon trees were still sleeping, but their leaves held the shape of a coming day. Inside his room, he slid the wooden box from under his bed and opened it. He placed the silk ribbon in one corner and the tiny glass bottle in another. He set the painted stone on top of the seashell so that "Start with True" faced up like a small flag. Then he closed the box, not to hide it, But the way a person closes a suitcase they will open again soon. At the window, he held the bottle to his lips. "Hi, Noor," he whispered, letting his words fall into the glass like careful rain. "I miss you." Today was heavy. I went for a ride on a train that knows how to hold nights without breaking them. I breathed in like bread. I breathed out like wishes. I found a map that says we can be in more than one place at once. I'm sad and I'm glad you're brave enough to go, and both can sit together. Write me back when your own night train brings you something to tell. He uncorked the bottle near the window. The words rose like steam and slipped through the crack between the curtain and the sill. Somewhere across water and windows in the private gardens of sleep, they would find a listening ear. Simi climbed into bed. He did not chase sleep. He met it the way one meets a friend who has been waiting without tapping their foot. As he drifted, he imagined the library of breezes opening its arches to let dawn wander the stacks. He imagined the small owl checking off another ribbon delivered. He imagined the lighthouse with no sea blinking at birds who would guide fishermen later in the day. Because light is useful to many kinds of travelers. He did not know if the Moonrise Line would return tomorrow, or next week, or when he turned 17 or 70. He only knew this: the night was not empty. It was a place with stops and stations, with quiet engineers and gentle fixers, with markets where courage cost no money and meadows where second chances grew like clover. He also knew that some trains arrive only when you stand at the station of yourself, carrying the ticket of your own honest heart. And so the last thoughts of the night were simple ones, stitched like a soft hymn. Hearts have rooms. Maps can be folded without creasing. Goodbyes are work, but not the end of work. And when the day feels heavy, there's always a place somewhere in you, near you, beyond you, where a bell rings softly and a door opens without creaking. By the time the first bird wrote its small letter to the morning, Sammy was sleeping. And the town, and the lemon trees, and the fountain that sounded like starlight when it finally decided to sing again, kept watch. The Moonrise Line sighed as it slipped back into the pocket of the world where it rests, waiting. It would be there for anyone who needed it, anyone ready to ride through the night and return with a pocket full of gentle truths. If you find yourself awake some evening, clutching a day that feels heavier than a backpack of stones, put on your sweater, step outside, and walk to the edge of what you know. Listen without hurrying. You might hear a bell too. And if you do, don't worry about the ticket. The Moonrise Line has its own kind of currency. It accepts questions, wishes, and goodbyes. And it always, always brings you home before the light,